Now let's have a look at some of the other columns that you can add to your grid view. When I go to the Add Column button, there's an interesting column called Quick Look. And what Quick Look does is it allows you to have a quick look to see if a task has any attachments associated with it, has any notes associated with it, or has any checklist items associated with it. So let's have a look at this. Let's say with regards to procurement, I want to add a note. It might be an invoice number, a quote, a purchase order number, even a phone number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually click on procurement, hit the more options and go into open details. When I open the details, I notice here is the name of the project, here's who it's assigned to, this is the label that's been assigned, and here I can add a note. So for example, I might put a purchase order number. And now I've added a note. If I hit the X, then what I see in the Quick Look column is a little symbol that says, when I rest on it, View Note. And if I click it, it brings up the details pane and I can see the note associated with this particular task. So feel free to add notes. I'm actually a big note taker. I note down phone numbers, conversations, where we got to, all sorts of details that I don't want to clutter the task name with, but I need to keep a note of. So that's a handy thing as well. But what you may notice further down here is also an option called Checklist. And Checklist is something that also appears in the Quick Look column. So what we do is we click on the Add an Item and we just start adding the sorts of things that we want to see in our checklist. So maybe I want to see initiative, and I'll just press enter to add a second checklist item, and notice that here it says 0/1. So 0 items have been completed out of a list of 1 item. Let's add a second one like plan, and then a third one like execute. And we've now got 3 items in our checklist, none of which, 0, have been completed. If I monitor and then I close, you can put various items against this particular task. Now you may also notice that there's a little option here, and that allows you to drag things up and drag things down. There's actually this item here also, which allows you to turn this into a brand new task. Maybe it's not an item anymore. And then you've got this little trash can where you can actually remove or delete this particular checklist item. So let's have a look at how this looks in the Quick Look column. So I'll close this. And what I've now got is a little option here that says View Checklist. And it tells me that 0 out of the 5 items are complete. If I click this and actually say I've done that by clicking it, I can see a progress bar and I can see 1 of 5 items are now complete in that checklist. If I close that, I can see 1 of 5 showing here as well. So the Quick Look shows you notes and it shows you checklist items. But another thing that you can add to a task is attachments, 1 or more attachments. Maybe there's some documentation that goes with a particular task. It might be a certificate of compliance, it might be a plan, a drawing, all sorts of things, even meeting notes. So if I now want to go and add some attachments, I could click on this little option here, or I could press Alt-M, which also brings it up. I could click on Open Items, or Open Details I should say, but the thing it doesn't mention is there's actually a shortcut key combination you can use to open details. Let's have a look at this. So I'll go back to procurement, and if I want to open the details, I'll go Alt-I. And Alt-I is a shortcut key to quickly bring up the details associated to the task you're sitting on. Now further down here you can see the Add Attachment. So if I go Add Attachment, and here I have the option to use a URL link, so it may be just a link to a location on the cloud, OneDrive or SharePoint, or it may be a Teams file, and the other option is from computer, so I'm just going to choose from computer. And maybe I actually have to add some details about the resource pool and about Jacob. So I'll add the resource pool first, open that, there's the attachment, and I'll add a second attachment from my computer, and I'll add Jacob. And okay. So they can be PDF files, they can be Excel files, in this case they're project files, but you can add as many attachments as you wish. So when I actually close the details pane, right at the top here, I now see in my Quick Look that I've actually got, and let's just widen a little bit, I've actually got an attachment, I've actually got 2 attachments, so the number of attachments is indicated. I've got 5 checklist items and 1 is completed, and I've also got a note, and I can click any one of these to go into the note, the checklist items, or the attachment. So I really like that quick look column and the ability to add copious amounts of notes, checklist items, break things down, and attachments to a particular task. So we've had a good look at the number of columns that you can add to your grid view, but sometimes there's columns that I need that aren't provided by Project for the Web. So I want to show you how you create your own new column or your own new field, depending on what term you want to use. So I'm going to click the Add Column button here, and this time I'm going to go for New Field. When I go for New Field, I can give the field a name, so I'm going to call it Cost, because I'd like to put a cost against some of these tasks. Now, cost is not a text field. It is, in fact, a number field. So you can create text fields where you can just write free-form text. You can create date fields where you can choose to enter only dates. You can make a column a number field, or you can make it that it's a yes-no field. Or you can even make it that it's a drop-down and they choose from the drop-down. But I'm just going to go for a number field. So it's a number field, it's called cost. Now the roll-up option is, do you want the cost, and I can't move this over, but do you want it to roll up to a summary task level? And I do. So I'm going to actually say that I want to sum the costs at a summary task level. And I'll go create. So I've created this column here, and if I had some costs associated with certain tasks, for example, I might say that the procurement is actually going to cost $10,000. I just enter it in, and notice how it rolls up to the summary tasks. If the delivery is going to cost me $500, then I can enter that there, and that's also rolled up to the summary tasks. So be aware that you can also not only use the columns that are provided by Project for the Web, I'm just reducing the width of some of these columns, but you can also create your own columns, whether they be text, number, date, yes, no, or drop-down columns. Another thing that's really useful with Project for the Web is goals. You can actually set goals or KPIs, and you can actually assign tasks towards achieving those goals. So at the top here where we've been looking at various views, let's now have a look at the goals view. And here we can set and we can achieve goals for this project. So I'm going to add a goal, and you can add as many as you require. The goal then gets given a name, so I'm going to call it House and Roof Painted. That's my goal. I want the house and the roof painted. If I press enter, there my goal is, and now I can start adding tasks to that goal. So if I add a new task, I can simply type it in, but let's say that I actually want to connect it to some of the tasks I've already got. So we go for this Connect Tasks button. Here are all the tasks in our grid, and we're able to add these to a particular goal. So with regards to painting the house and the roof, I'd have to tick these 3 options because they're definitely associated with painting the house. I'd have to choose these 3 options. Notice I can't choose summary tasks. These 3 options are to do with painting the house. So are these 3 here. And we've also got the external part of the house as well. So all of these need ticking as well. And I'll just go save. And so I've created a goal, that is to see the house and the roof painted, and these are the tasks that will contribute towards that goal, and I have 18 of them and they are yet not started. So you can create a number of goals. I might create another one, for example, landscaping, add another goal, call it landscaping, press enter, connect tasks to it, and scroll down and simply choose my landscaping task and save. So once that task is completed, I've achieved that goal. I'll add a third goal, which is the build for 2023. The build for 2023, I want to connect the building of the fence and the building of the shed to that goal, and I'll save. And so I've created 3 goals. I can collapse them just by hitting this little chevron, and I can expand them as well. If I now return to my grid view, let's add another column. To the right, I'm going to hit the plus add column button, and this time I'm going to add the option goal. Immediately I can see what goal each of these tasks has been assigned to. So in project for the web, we've realized that there are a number of views. A lot of what we've done has been occurring in the grid view. But let's just go back and have a look at the board view. The board view is when you do want to see just a board, a visual card style board of your tasks, but grouped in different ways. At the moment, I've got my task grouped by priority. But if I hit this drop down here, I can group them by assigned to. So who's doing what? I can also go into here and say, actually give me the progress. So nothing started yet. And if I go back into here, I could actually choose to group by labels or priority, or now I have the option to group by goal. So it's very much a card style use of buckets when you're working with the board. Now, how do we use these buckets? Let's go back to grouping by bucket. At the moment, I don't have any buckets really, except bucket 1, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'd like to create some buckets. Now for me, a bucket that would be useful is whether they're actually subcontractors or whether they're internal staff. So let's rename, or let's add a bucket called contractors. And let's actually create another one called staff. I'm actually thinking, let's rename this painting contractors, paint contractors. And let's add another bucket that is builder contractors. Okay, so some of the painting that will be done by paint contractors, and some will be done by staff. So as far as tidying, I'd like our painters who are on staff to do those. So I'm just going to drag it and drop it on staff. And as far as painting, I'll leave that to the contractors. Prepping, I'll use staff. Prepping again. So you just drag the tasks into, let's leave that one behind, into the various buckets. Painting the roof, I'm going to get a contractor to do that because there's scaffolding involved, and I'm also going to get them to do the external part of the house. When it comes to management, that's actually staff. And when it comes to the builders, one of those is a contractor. Let's just drag that onto there. And one of those builders is on staff. And the landscaper, let's say, this is also painter, so that was contractor. And Paint Complete can just stay there because it's a milestone. Oh, no, let's put it in staff. And landscaper is staff as well. So the point is you can create your own buckets, whatever makes sense to you. Usually you want to group tasks in a way that differs from any of these listed here. So if it's not by person or it's not by label or priority or goal, then you want to create your own buckets and be able to view and group and manage information by bucket. Now if I go back to the grid, I'm able now to add another column, add column, and I'm able to show the bucket that each of these tasks is assigned to. Microsoft Project for the web supports Agile project management. What it does is it allows you to use a feature called sprints. So teams are able to create and prioritize tasks in their backlogs. They can define sprints and define their date boundaries. They can move tasks between those sprints. So what we're doing here is we're saying that tasks that aren't added to a sprint will automatically appear in a backlog. And then you're able to group by sprints in the board view, and you're able to add tasks to those sprints in the board view. Let's have a look at that shortly. Using the sprints filter in the people view, we can quickly see what team is working on what sprints, and we can rebalance that team's workload. And that's the agility factor. We can also group by sprint in the board view to see your team's progress and again remaining tasks to determine what went well and what could be improved. So let's have a look at this whole sprint agile project management thing. So let's have a look at working with sprints in Project for the Web. I'm going to start by going to the board view, and where we've got group by, I'm going to choose to group by sprint. Now what we've got here are all the tasks in our project assigned to backlog. But we're going to create or add some sprints, and we're going to move tasks into those sprints. And each sprint has a time or a date, boundary. So I'm going to add a sprint. I'm going to call it 2023 July. And of course, this would be the 1st of July until the end of July. And add sprint. I'm going to add another sprint, 2023 August. And 1st of August until the end of August. Add sprint. Then I'll add 2023 September. 1st of September to the end of September. And one last one, October, 2023 October. Start date October 1st, end date end of October. Add sprint. So create sprints that reflect date boundaries. And then this task is in September. This task is in October. And I'm just basically looking at their dates and putting them into the relevant sprint. August, October, September, October, August. And so just drag your tasks into the correct sprint. You're going to delete that, so you can delete a sprint, and I will put these into the default sprint, which is July. And so what we've done is we've organised our tasks into various sprints. Okay, this one, yeah, that's correct. All right, so what we can then do is we can filter by sprints. So I could filter out just the ones for October or September and not October. So you have the ability to then filter by one or more sprints. You have the ability to group by sprints as well. You have the ability with Agile Project Management to move tasks between various sprints and react to changes in customer needs, etc. So that's the whole sprint idea with Project for the Web. So now let's look at how we track the progress of our project by marking items or tasks as having been completed. For this, I'm going to go back to the grid view. Now, if we want to mark an item as complete, what we could do is we could add a column which is called percentage complete. And what we could do, for example, if I came over to here and said, look, the draw up plan is complete, I could just scroll to the left and click the circle here. If I click the circle, I've basically marked this task as complete, and I get a lovely little bing. A strike through appears on the task name, and if I look at the column, I can see it's 100% complete, which means that painting the house is now 2% complete, and that the project as a whole is 1% complete. I can then proceed to go down and mark these two as complete as well, and these appear here. I could also go to this particular field and type 100%, or I could go to a particular field and type 50% or 20%, whatever percentage you would like to enter as a percentage complete. Those that I put 50 and 20 are not showing with a tick because they're not 100% complete. If I want to look at this on the timeline, I'll go to the timeline and I'll see ticks for those tasks that are completed and a strike through on the task name. I'll see that there's a solid bar and in some cases a partial bar where this one's 50% complete and this one's 20% complete. So you can actually start to see the completion appear on your timeline as well as a column and at the beginning and at the end in your grid view. If I was to look at the board view, what I start to see in the board view, especially if I ask to see things by progress, then I start to see things as struck through and I start to see circles And these tasks appear in the completed bucket or group. And I can see that certain things are in progress, and I can see that there are certain things that are still not started. So completion and progress appears in the grid in that form, the board in this form, it appears on the timeline in this form, but also we've also got things like charts. The charts tell me what is in progress, 2, what is not started, 11, what is completed, 4, and even what's late, there's 13 tasks left. So out of all the tasks, we can see how they're progressing in terms of status. Also, when I go to the bucket and I rest on the bars, I can see what's not started, what's in progress, what's late, and what's completed by bucket. By bucket, by status, and then effort per person. So I can see that Cathi has spent a completed total of 30 hours and everything's completed. Whereas over here, I can see that SSPC2 has not started certain tasks, has completed 396.8 hours, and has got 307.2 hours in progress. So we've got effort per person, and then bucket, and then status. But we've also got the ability to filter in here like we can in other views, so that's really handy. If I go to people, I can actually see things as incomplete or late. And I can see that I've also got completed, but I actually have to expand it to see the 3 tasks that Cathi has completed, and she has 0 incomplete and 0 late. And so scroll down to see any completed tasks and then collapse it back again. If I go to goals, I can actually see also what's been completed with a circle and a tick and a strike through appearing within the goals in the goals view. Another view that's sort of tucked away to the right of goals, which is assignments. And if you go into assignments, you can actually see each person who has been assigned tasks in this project, the tasks that they've been given, the start, the end, the total number of hours and how that's been distributed over time. And so we're grouping by resource, but we could group by task alternatively. And if I group by task, I can then see who's working on each of these tasks and so on. So you've got this grouping factor as well. So I'll go back to resource. So that's a view called assignments. Now let me show you something called conditional formatting. And for this, I'm going to go to the grid view. You may have noticed when you're in the grid view that there's actually this option here called conditional colouring. And what we can do is we can make certain tasks that meet a certain rule stand out conditionally in a different colour. So I might decide that if anything is 100% complete, I really want it to stand out. So I'm going to go to conditional colouring. I'm going to choose the field percentage complete. I'm going to say that if it is equal to 100, then I want to choose the colour that it's to appear as. So I'm going to go for gold and save. And so what we see here is conditional colouring automatically applying a gold hue to anything that's 100% complete. Another common application might be if a certain person or subcontractor is assigned to a job. So over here, for example, assigned to. I'll go conditional colouring and I might say actually if assigned to, the operator is equal to, and I'll select the person, Cathi Barker, then I want to choose to, oh that's adding another condition, let's trash that. I want to choose to show them in a blue colour and save. And so anything that's got Cathi assigned will stand out in a blue colour. So if you want anything to stand out for any particular reason, then use the conditional colouring option to create a rule that says if a certain condition is met, then colour it in a certain way. Something that I found very useful is being able to export my project to Excel. By doing this, I can then create some bespoke or unique reports, including things like pivot tables and charting, and even formulas. In the top right corner are 3 dots called More Actions. And in here is where we earlier got to the project details. But also it's in here that I can actually copy a project, duplicate a project, because maybe I've got a project that's very similar and I basically want to copy this file and then just tweak it. But what I'm wanting to do is wanting to export to Excel. So I click this option here and it says it's preparing, and now it's asking to save the file as the job number, and I'm going to put that just simply on my desktop and save. If I then click it, I'm able to open it in Excel, and let me just bring this over. You can see it. And here is what it's exported to Excel. What we have here is the project name, manager, start and finish date, the duration of the project, the percentage complete, and when it was exported. And then we have all of our columns that we set up in our grid view, going right across to extra columns such as sprint, check items, which are the 5 items I put against that task, any notes, what's completed, milestones, yes or no. So you get a real thorough picture. And then this could be the basis of some reports, but I'm just going to hit the X for now. So of all the columns in our grid view, I think the only ones we have left are start and finish. And so we can see the start and finish of each task. You can, of course, click the drop down and hide any columns that you don't need. You can, of course, drag these columns and put them into position. So I might decide that I need to see the start, duration, and the finish in front of duration. So now I have my task, my start, my finish date, my duration, my dependencies, who's assigned to what, how many hours they're doing, the priority, any labeling that I'd like to add, any notes, attachments or checklist items, any costs, that was a new field I created, any goals associated with that task, any buckets, and the percentage complete. And that's all the columns added to our grid view. Just choose what you feel is relevant to you.